Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm very excited about our guest today, Lois Letchford. And she's going to be telling us about a lot of different things. And right now it's time for Dr. Sam to shut up and let Lois start by telling us all about yourself, Lois. So here we go.
Hello, Dr. Sam. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for connecting with me. This is quite fun. Now, you want me to tell you about myself. Well, it's quite a long story, but my real dive into literacy came in 1994 when my 6-year-old son failed first grade. And when I say failed, I mean he came out in the negative territory. Not only did he not learn about words and letters and sounds, he learned that he couldn't learn. And that's a really sad place for a 6-year-old to be. He wet his pants, he bit his fingernails, and his teacher shouted at him every day throughout year 1. My husband is a professor, and we were quite shocked with those results. And then they gave us results at the testing at the end of the year. And they said, well, he's got no words, he can't read anything. He's got no strengths, and he's got a low IQ. And that was really devastating. However, because my husband's a professor, he had study leave the following year, and we took Nicholas out of school for 6 months. And I started with a series of books that were going to help him learn to read called Success for All. And they were an abject failure. He couldn't do anything. My mother-in-law was with me, and she said to me, Lois, make learning fun. So I put away whatever I was doing, and I just started to think, what can Nicholas do? And I thought, he can see patterns and he can rhyme words. And with that, I started to write simple little poems, some of which you'll see on my website. That poetry totally changed the atmosphere in our classroom. Nicholas relaxed. I read to him. We did all of the things that we needed to do. He illustrated the poems, and learning started to happen. And with the writing of poems, you go from the simple to coming up with the double O words, like cook, look, and book. Well, I wrote a story about Captain James Cook, the last of the great explorers, who took a look and wrote a book without the help of anyone else. And with that, my Nicholas said to me, who came before Captain Cook? And I said, oh, that's easy. That's Christopher Columbus. And then he said, and who came before Columbus? And that question floored me because I didn't know. In fact, I hadn't even thought about it. Do you know who came before Columbus?
Well, it may very well be one of the Vikings, do you think? Or I'm just taking a wild stab.
Certainly the Vikings were around the 10th century. And because my husband was in Oxford, we're in this city of everything, we were able to go to the Bodleian Library and find a book of maps by a man called Ptolemy, who lived at 250 AD, and wrote the first book of world maps. And we bought a copy, and my son was over the moon. What I didn't know then was that his spatial awareness places him on the 99th percentile of the population. And he would drool over these maps. And during that time in England, it absolutely changed everything. I saw Nicholas as a kid who could learn. He learned that learning was exciting and so much fun. And then, other things happened. I'm not going to go into all the details, but that's the nuts and bolts. And I did teach him to decode. We go back to Australia, and I said, Nicholas asked these amazing questions. The lady who had done the testing put her hands on her hips, stood in front of me and said, well, he's the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching.
Oh. Sad.
I left, back to school, and I said, you can call him whatever you like, but if he is the worst child you've seen in 20 years of teaching, Don't expect him to learn like everyone else. Something happened, and because many teachers will be listening to this reading podcast, I'm going to tell you what happened next. The reading teacher sent Nicholas home with 10 sight words. She gave 2 sentences for every word. Same 2 sentences she gave to every other child in the school. For the word saw, she sent him home with the sentences, I saw a cat climb up a tree. And the second one's even better. I saw a man rob a bank.
Oh.
Nicholas stood with me and he said, I saw a cat. Nuh-uh. I was a cat. No. I had a cat, and he just handed me the paper. At this time, it took me a little while to work out what was going on in his mind, but I eventually did. And I asked this of teachers, and I say, what is happening? What's he thinking? And in fact, what he's thinking is he is cutting the cat in half, because he's only got the concrete meaning of the word saw, and the teacher has only given the concrete meaning. Sorry, the abstract meaning of the word saw. She has failed to show him how the written language works.
Well, that is a somewhat sad story in some ways, but a happy story because by gosh, by golly, you turned into the ultimate parent who was making sure people were doing right by her child, and that is a good part of the story. And now we're going to continue with that in a moment. But
yes,
right now I'm going to let you give us a quick little tour of your website. I was so impressed with your website. Let's see if I can do that. Now, let's see. Are you seeing your website?
I am seeing my website.
Okay, I zoom into classrooms and sometimes I forget to do the share screen and there's nothing there. Okay, so tell us a little bit about this trauma series first.
The son I'm talking about, young Nicholas, in 2018 graduated with a PhD in applied mathematics from Oxford University. And I'm thinking, my son's done really well. Now he'll be able to tell me what happened in first grade. And I said, Nicholas, tell me what happened. And my son sat on the couch and he cried. And not a single word came out. And that's when I realized what had happened to him in first grade is not just an incident that we can put away. In fact, that he has been traumatized by what had happened in school. And I talked to my sister and I talked to other people and realized we're doing damage to these children that leaves a scar, leaves a mark that stays with them for the rest of their lives. And with that, this series came about and I connected with other people. And the series is on now. We've got 2 more people to talk with. We're doing a series talking to teenagers in May, June, and then we'll start again in September, October, and we'll talk to Dr. Mary Helen Immarato Yang, who talks about emotions and learning.
Okay, and all this is available to my readers, and I promise them that this Letchford.com will be in the blog to click on. So that's one place. Now let's take a look at these resources. Poetry for kids. Oh my. Look at that. Look at that. Okay.
These were some of the poems I wrote for my son. Some have been written since. But when students struggle, these are what I go back to.
Okay. Are these like public domain kind of things that any teacher can use? God bless you.
Yes.
I know what some of my kindergartens and first graders are going to be seeing in the next couple of weeks. Thank you for those. Okay.
Yes.
So I pressed on resources for that.
Yeah.
Now remind me, okay, takeaways. This caught my eye. Okay. Tell us a bit about this and look, and by the way, readers, please notice you can download these takeaways and look who the lectures are by. So just briefly tell us about that.
these are the people who talked on my first series, and just little takeaways about what they said, and, you know, about what the goal was in talking to me and sharing that we, you know, we cannot traumatize children in such a way when we go to school. When we send them, you know, we must send the children to school. So we must have at least an environment where children are happy to learn and happy to come.
Okay, and then of course we have the little about thing here. Oh gosh,
Ah.
So there we are. And by the way, with your permission, that's going to appear in the blog so that folks know who you
Perfect.
are. Okay,
Yes.
so that's kind of our little tour of the blog. I'm wrong. I'm absolutely wrong. Tour of your website. Anything else you want to call to our attention before we leave?
Well, my blog is there. I talk about, you know, all sorts of things on reading and literacy and trauma and neuroscience. My sister wrote that one. My sister Lenore Hall wrote that particular one because she's a psychiatric nurse and she's done a lot of work with trauma, and she was sharing her thoughts on trauma and how it impacts the brain and learning.
Okay, well, when I was on this site a little earlier, I followed your blog. So I'll be, and I hope a number of my readers do the same. Okay, so anything else you want to call our attention to before we move on?
If you go to reversed up the top, the first,
let's see.
yeah,
Reversed. Okay.
book trailer. The book trailer is worth seeing. The book trailer is worth having a look at. Yes.
Okay. Should I just run it?
It's 1 minute, 49 seconds long. Yes, you should.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No. Let's see. Now, why is it running?
Oh, you got to, you have to click on, I don't know.
Oh, wait. It helps if it helps to click on play.
6 years old. He failed first grade. He couldn't read. Usually students have 1,000 words. He could read 10 words, and we were told that he has a low IQ. You can't do anything. The child is slow. I decided to take Nicholas on myself. I'm going to try it at home and work. I had these books called Successful Phonics-Based Decoding, and it was a disaster. I made learning fun. You throw away what he can't do. Once we got that, you have a different child.
For the degree Doctor of Philosophy, Christchurch, Nicholas Letchford. I'm graduating from the University of Oxford with a DPhil in Applied Mathematics.
I became the reading specialist teaching children who had failed reading programs.
As opposed to focusing on the weaknesses, capitalising on strengths, I would have got to Oxford if it wasn't because of my dream and aspirations.
Labelling is the worst thing we do to children. Believe in your child, then they can achieve whatever they like.
Quite impressive. Quite impressive. Okay. So we're off your site now, and I have to look at what my next question is going to be. And that is, I'm going to ask you to talk about your new article with Tim Rosinski and talk about the book that we were just doing. And that's going to take up the whole next block of time. So you've kind of given us I just, by the way, readers, once again, there will be a link to get the book. I got mine on Kindle. That way I just got it instantly. Poof, and it was there. That's kind of nice. So here we go. It's all you now. Take it away.
Because I have specialised in teaching children who struggle so much, Nicholas got an acceptable label when he was aged 11 that he is 2nd percentile speech language impaired. If you take a child like that, they have no memory, or they appear to have no memory for words. And when you just put teaching of decoding on top of a really poor foundation, they don't get it. So what I do with my teaching is that I build a foundation as alongside teaching decoding. And one of the words that really struck me that Nicholas had a problem with was the word it. And then I went on to teach, other children who are just like Nicholas. Every one of my students has a problem with the word it. Because we teach it, just learn it. It's nothing. And yet, when you put it in a title, in a book, it becomes meaningful. And what happens in our teaching is we say, just learn it, and we don't teach children what they have to do when it comes to reading, that they have to actually think about it. And the book I use is called Aha Said Stork is one that I use. The other one for older children I use is A Little Mole Who Knew It Was None of Its Business. And I read through the book, and they say to the children, now, what does the it mean? And they say, it is nothing. So what I identify is that there's much more than decoding going on. And you come back to it and you look at it and read through the book and share it and think about it and say, let's put nothing instead of it and see what happens. And you get the students thinking. Does that make sense to you?
More than sense, yes. And just the thought that I know there are some folks out there that think that the background and context and all that doesn't matter at all. And gosh, it matters immensely. And I don't want to get a little research argument going on here, but read the last couple of blogs I did. There is research to support the thought that it's much more, that it's a combination of the background and the comprehension, and you've got to do that. So basically, you are preaching to the choir when you preach that. Okay.
Well, what I've done a little YouTube clip on what I call an invisible backpack. Every child who arrives at school comes with an invisible backpack, and we think by the time they get to first grade, they've all got it full. And what we don't realize is that some children don't come full. It comes with really low oral language, and it impacts the way they learn. And I can say that because my son had ear infections from 8 to 18 months. And what I didn't know was how that impacted the brain and his learning and language.
You have to promise me to send me the link to that YouTube. I want to make sure that's in the blog.
Okay, yeah, well, I've done numerous ones, but that's one people have talked about. And the other component is, like, I grew up reading words without comprehending. And, it takes a long time to get over that. But it impacts now the way I teach. And I think you said something similar.
Yes, I have. And let us not rekindle major battles quite yet. But there's more. It takes both. You have to do things for both comprehension and I'm going to do a gallery view here. You've got to take things, you have to do more than just decoding. The decoding and comprehension go hand in hand. And if you play your cards right, you can really help. I am a strong advocate of using poetry. I've written very similar books to the ones you have, but they're not published or anything. But and I would, let's see if I've got it right here. Okay, no, there we are. Here's one that Tim did a while back. Phonics poetry. That's sitting on my desk always.
Yes.
And this is one that at an IRA conference, this lady presented Plum Bum poems and other chunk poems. And these are the kind of things that I draw on. something that teachers forget about, language experience. And I think what you've described is language experience. Language experience is one of the oldies but goodies. You write down what the child says, and I see your head nodding, so maybe you have something to say about language experience.
My box lesson is language experience. It's using the words could, would, and should. But it's all about experience. And why experience is so important is that it changes the brain. And we're giving them a safe environment, a safe emotional environment in which to learn. That's the research too, you know, and I think you would agree with me. My box lesson is hilarious because I take a shoebox and I put on the front what could be in it, what should be in it, and what would you like to find in it.
Ooh.
And then, you know, you've got it, and then it makes a multi-choice test. You got a choice. So my children are thinking, what is it? And then you open the box, and then inside there are more boxes. And one of the boxes has got a bottle of juice with no label. And then there's a letter from the zoo. A letter from the zoo says something like, "Dear Mrs. Letchford, please find the closed sample you requested. The most uncooperative in providing the required sample. It took 3 of our most experienced handlers and lots of water to fill the bottle," and so on and so on. So what's in this bottle? And my students are enamored, because how do you find out? You've got to taste it. I could be tasting.
Okay, well, I'm looking at the clock now and thinking that we've come to that time when it's a good time for final thoughts and wrapping up. And this has just been delightful and informative. I absolutely encourage my readers to go visit your website, visit your blog, and I'll make sure that anything that you think is really important, that there'll be links to that. But this is a time for Dr. B to shut up and give you a chance to kind of make your final statements here. So here we go. This is all you.
My final statement, Professor Brian Camborne, and he says when children fail to learn to read, they fail because we have failed to give them adequate demonstrations, or demonstrations that they cannot engage with. That's what happened with Nicola saw. Make it meaningful to the child, transforming instruction. And my motto comes from Professor Kurt Dudley Marling: learning problems dwell in activities and cultural practices, and not in the heads of individuals. So it's up to us to change the teaching, to engage children so that we can teach them to learn to read and write and be productive members and enjoy life like everyone else.
Wow.
How about
home run? No. Let's see, a grand slam home run in the bottom of the 9th in the rubber game of the World Series. That's just what you've done. So there it is. Cha-ching.
Please buy a copy of my book. Share it with every teacher in your school. Make sure they all read it, because a lot comes out about how we think about children and how that thinking impacts how we teach.
Okay, well, I traditionally end my interviews with a Zoom wave, because that's the new thing. So Zoom wave, here we go. Bye-bye. And thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.